name is Harry Keil, and I was born in Berlin, Germany.
Ein Volk! Und ihr, meine Jugend, soll dieses Volk nun werden. Es lebe die nationalsozialistische Bewegung! Es lebe Deutschland!
When I was 7 years old, Hitler came to power. We were supposed to go to Santo Domingo, but we were on the second boat. The first boat left, but the second boat didn't. It was already too late. That was 41 already. Germany was at war at that time, and we didn't get out anymore. The community, that you're not talking about a small place there. Berlin is a very big city, so it's strictly city life. Kristallnacht, that's about 38, I believe, and I was, 10, 12 years old. They demolished everything, the Jewish stores, and they demolished the synagogues to some degree. Some synagogues existed. Where I went bar mitzvah, that existed until probably around 1940 or so. I had to go to school every day a different way, not to be beaten up. And you couldn't fight back either. Because you fight back and they tell their parents, and the parents would have the whole family locked up, you know. And 41, they closed the schools. Later on, we went to Theresienstadt. To my time, it wasn't too bad. I mean, it was no pleasure either, but it wasn't too bad. Relatively speaking. You still were hungry, but I happened to get a chance to work in the kitchen, so it wasn't too bad for me. Some people, yes. But then later on, they made the transports. In Auschwitz, you get there, they decide whether you're going to live or die, and that is it. You stay there. In my case, some people stayed there. Some people went to work in other places. Like I went to work in, they sent me and my father. I met my father in Auschwitz a couple of days later. And from there, they sent us to Bavaria. Now, if somebody happened to steal your shoes at night, which happens, it happened to me actually, then in order to get your shoes, to get another pair of shoes, when you came home from work, you had to stand in line because you weren't the only one. Now, if you were lucky enough to get there in time, that wasn't too bad. But 9 times out of 10, you never did. Until, it took me about 3 days. You know, when you come home from work, every 3 days. But every time you do that, you don't get any soup. In other words, all you have all day was that little piece of bread. So that was quite a sacrifice at the time. But that's the only way you could have gotten some shoes. In the meantime, I wrapped some cement bags around my feet. In the winter time, with the snow and ice, they don't last very long. So one time, I just fainted on the way. Now, if if there weren't anybody to pick you up and carry you home, rather not home, I call it home, back to the barracks, then you were left on the street, and if the guards saw you, they shot you. So I was lucky. Somebody carried me back to the camp. I don't know how I got there. I mean, I was out. When people escaped there, and they got caught by the Nazis, they would put them back in the camp, and they would work them over. You would have several people there. What they would do with them, by the time they are through with them, they don't even know their name. And if they're still breathing in the morning, they would hang them. But most of the time, if they're breathing, it probably was just nerve reaction or something like that, because they wouldn't know about it. They made us watch it because of a deterrent, you know, as a deterrent. And then they would take him and drag him from one barracks to another to show the people what happens if you do. There's one thing with memory. It dims over time. Hatred, you'll never get rid of it. Racism, because of hatred, you'll never get rid of it. And anti-Semitism, you'll never get rid of that either. All of these things have been in existence as long as human beings exist. Until the human being changes, this is not going to change. And in that respect, the human being hasn't changed much. A little maybe, but not very much. There's one thing I can tell you. Learn from history, because whatever happened in history can happen in the future. Now we got people in America today, our people, that think that it can't happen in America. And that is a very, very big mistake. They are doing exactly the same thing, the same mistakes that the people in our people in Germany made. Exactly, a complete duplication. It might be a little different, but basically the same thing. And in my opinion, that is due to the fact that the human being hasn't learned. They have not learned from history. They are making the same mistake time and again. You can go all the way back into biblical times, and you will find that they are making the same mistake every time. As I said, maybe a little different due to technology, but basically the same identical mistake.